Hello, and welcome to this webinar on the Progress Test Series. I'm Simon Graves, and I'm part of a team of education advisors here at GL, all available to support you with getting the very best from your assessments and data. I've got over 20 years experience of working in schools as a teacher, senior leader and head, in state schools here in the UK, as well as internationally, albeit not during a global pandemic. So I do fully understand the challenges not only of collating accurate data, but more importantly, what to do with it to make a difference to our young people. So our purpose today is to help you not only to understand the suite of progress tests that we offer, but to support you in utilising the data that they provide for you to best support your students. Over the next 30 minutes, I'll be taking you through a brief overview of the PT series, what each test provides and some key terminology, the levels of analysis available through the reports that are produced, how to identify potential strengths and challenges in students' learning in your own practice, how the different types of data and reporting can help you identify trends or gaps in learning, particularly in the situation we find ourselves, and what to do with the data you've got from the autumn term tests. At the end of the session, I'm confident that you'll have a solid understanding of how these tests can support you, your teachers, and most importantly, your students, in maximising the impact of the information you're collating on learning. Often our biggest fear in education is that target setting and data reduces young people to mere numbers on a spreadsheet. What we're passionate about is the antithesis of that, to use the information to fully understand why a student might be struggling and how we can help them overcome these challenges. For each of the three subjects, both core subject knowledge and the underlying skills necessary to progress and demonstrate understanding are assessed. There's a clear breakdown of all this information within the reports to ensure that the data you are receiving can contribute meaningfully to teaching, learning, and curriculum design. It's important to remember, however, that these tests supplement rather than replace the need to use information from sources such as classroom questioning, school tests, marking books, self and peer assessment. They cannot tell you who is feeling ill on a particular day or who is having difficulties at home. Nothing replaces a great teacher, after all. They are assessments applying a national reference and the ability to meaningfully compare performance from one assessment to another and from one student to another. In this rather unusual year, we advise that you should continue to follow the normal guidance on which test level to use with each year group. You'll find links in the final slide of follow-up support material. We recommend using your progress tests in both the autumn and summer terms. In autumn 2020, the progress test will have provided you with both a gap analysis, helping you to plan your curriculum support for all students, and a baseline from which to measure progress in summer 2021. If you've used progress tests previously, you may still be interested in reviewing progress categories from summer 19 to autumn 20. However, we don't recommend drawing too many conclusions about progress from there, as over a year will have passed since your previous PT assessments. Before we delve into the tests themselves, it's useful to look at the scores they all produce in the broadest sense. The Standard Age Score, or SAS, is the most important piece of information derived from any standardized test. The SAS is based on a student's raw score, which has been adjusted for age and placed on a scale that makes a comparison with a nationally representative sample of students across the UK. If you're used to a percentage, that can initially cause some confusion, but it's really very user-friendly. The national average score is 100, and the scale runs from 69 to 141 from most levels of progress tests, with the average range between 89 to 111, below average 69 to 88, and above average between 112 and 141. You'll notice also that the scores are broken down into 9 stay nines. Stay nines 1 to 3 are those students scoring below average, 4 to 6 are the average range, and 7 to 9 have scored above average. The SAS is the fairest and most accurate way to compare the performance of different students within a year group or across year groups. But the stay nines can also be useful if your school uses setting or banding, for instance. Now, we understand that you're facing many challenges, seemingly new ones all the time. What this year has shown, perhaps more than anything, to those not in education, is how quickly and effectively teachers and schools can and do respond to obstacles and new initiatives to ensure that the young people in your care always get the best deal. So almost regardless of the specific impact and the potential reasons why some students may have been affected more than others, here are just some of the ways PT Series can help you. There are a number of ways to approach the data these tests will provide you with, depending on your role, your priorities, or your focus. To begin with today, we're going to focus on curriculum content analysis and question level analysis, thinking specifically about how to use your group and individual reports to support decision making and personalized learning, as well as baselining at transition. For students who are new to your school, obtaining a baseline of their skills, knowledge, and understanding is going to provide you with an invaluable platform from which to measure their progress as they develop in a new setting. Validating teacher judgments will be more important in year groups who have not undergone transition to new settings and instead remain with you. The Progress Test Series can provide that validation. We will also look at how parent reports can support with providing feedback to parents and carers and facilitate the home learning that's taking place now, as well as any that may occur due to isolation. And finally, as I mentioned, they enable you to make comparisons nationally, and you'll soon be able to fully contextualize your results with a national post-lockdown picture. There are a number of different reports you're able to access on completion of the tests. The group reports for teachers collate results for a particular group or class. Individual reports go into much finer detail about implications for teaching and learning for each student. There are also parent-friendly versions of the individual reports, which provide more targeted advice for supporting students from home. Our Excel report is what you'll want to use if you're importing any of your Progress Test Series assessment data into your MIS or other data collection system, or if you wish to do your own analysis or manipulation of the data. If you use CAT4, our cognitive abilities test, you can also use the combination report, which compares ability, as measured with CAT4, with attainment, as measured through the Progress Test Series or our reading test, NGRT. To begin with, we're going to look at group reports and curriculum content, and how they can be used as a starting point for recognizing gaps and trends in this year's cohort. The group reports include a comparison of the specific group or class that you're looking at against the national average, aided by a color key. Curriculum content analysis in the group report for teachers enables you to easily identify strengths and development opportunities across groups or cohorts, helping you to address gaps in learning through data-informed curriculum planning. So a department head could run group reports for whole cohorts this year, identifying any particular strengths and challenges that can be taken into account with regards to schemes of work and curriculum planning. In this English example, we can see that the national average in pink is noticeably lower than the group average in green for non-narrative reading comprehension. For English skills, grammar and punctuation, we can see that the national average in pink is higher than the group average in green. However, as this is only a relatively small difference, it may be that it wouldn't need immediate attention, but it's still worth noting. This level of analysis might also be used to inform group interventions, which I'll come on to shortly. The lowest scores may not be the weakest area, so curriculum content analysis is provided in two formats, a table and a graph, both of which show comparisons to the national average. The graph makes it very quick and easy to do a visual check of your curriculum content analysis and pick out stronger and potentially more challenging areas. But it's worth then looking at the detail provided in the table. In this table, from a progress test in maths, we can see that although one of the lowest percentage scores is in geometry and measures, it's actually one of the strongest areas when we consider the national average and the difference between these scores. So this area doesn't necessarily need to be a priority when planning how to fill gaps in learning. We might instead choose to focus on number and algebra, where we see the biggest difference between the group and national scores. It may also be helpful to look at the number of questions included in a test. For example, we can see here that probability and statistics do not feature highly, so small differences in performance would lead to large differences in the percentage scores. One question in probability is equal to 25% overall in that area. Delving deeper into your data, the question level analysis helps to identify those questions within a particular curriculum area that your group did well in or struggled with. This is again provided in graphical form to aid quick and easy comparison to national averages. You'll see on this graph that the national average is represented by the pink line and the group scores are represented by the green bars. The national average enables you to contextualize your question level analysis. There are two questions near the end of this progress series assessment where the national average is far lower than this class achieved, so this should be celebrated. Something clearly went very well here. On the other hand, we can also pick out the questions where there's the biggest adverse difference between performance and the national average. So this helps to clearly identify areas we can work on with students. It may be there's been a drive internally focusing on translation of shapes, for instance, at the expense of time spent on working out volume. You don't have to worry about learning all those codes, however. The table includes question content being included for your reference. In this example, we can identify that converting between units of measure and ordering fractions are two areas that this particular group found more tricky than the national sample. Although two questions relating to calculating the size of angles were answered incorrectly by the majority of the class, this need not be as great an area of concern where the difficulty of these questions would appear to be higher based on the national sample success rate. As with all similar tables that show the difference between group and national averages, if the difference is positive, it indicates that the group performed better than the national sample, and where the difference is negative, it indicates that the group performed worse than the national sample. There are things to learn where a group has performed particularly well, of course, so don't just focus on any negatives. What is it about a particular topic that's engaged your students? Is it the way it's been taught, a teacher's expertise or preferences? There are lessons to be learned, which inevitably will impact on helping you to close the gaps in areas where you need to. Now, you'll no doubt want to know which of your students has been the most affected by significant changes in their lives at the best of times. During COVID-19, this is even more important. Students will not have had the same access to online learning or home support as one another, and whilst we may be able to make informed guesses about which of our students are the most affected, we don't actually know. As such, it's important to identify the students who need us most and support them as effectively as possible, whether that be key groups or individual students. I mentioned earlier looking at groups where significant trends in learning can be identified. Particularly in the current context, you may want to ask questions such as, which key groups are already a priority to you in school? What's their data looking like now? Are they even more of a priority now, or are other groups now a priority? The reports will automatically sort by SEND, EAL, gender, and free school meals. +2 that are customizable yourselves. These graphs provided in your group report show you the national average in pink and a breakdown of scores across SAS bands for each key group, allowing you to identify trends and patterns within key groups and compare performance across key groups. There's a health warning when looking at specific demographics, however. Comparing 117 first language English speakers with 3 EAL students isn't going to be statistically sound. However big your school, you are looking at relatively small numbers in some of these groups, sometimes single figures, which can have a big impact on percentages. In this school, we can see there's a high percentage of students on free school meals who are below and above average. So what's going right for those free school meal students performing above average? Are they getting or have they had different support to those performing below average? For those who are performing below, do they need additional support to catch up on gaps in learning as a result of school closures? Without fully understanding the context of the individuals making up this cohort, we're just using guesswork, and we're in danger then of focusing more on the numbers than the students themselves. If you're a classroom teacher, you'll have a good idea of how your students are doing, and importantly, the context around why. But any additional piece of evidence will help you in making decisions, adapting teaching, and personalizing learning. Using your key group analysis, you may already recognize that some of your students are struggling. Looking at those students' individual reports will help you to identify more precisely where to focus that support. In this truncated example from an English group report, we can see that Ryan ranks 25th in his class of 25 students, with an SAS of 76, which is a below average score. A quick check of the number of questions attempted shows us that his low score is not explained by not completing the test, for example. The data indicates that Ryan might be a priority for support once we identify his gaps in learning. This is unlikely to come as a surprise to his English teacher, but it will be useful for them to see where he has done well and not so well. We can then look further into Ryan's results using his individual report to help identify the content he most needs support with. So on this individual report, we can see that Ryan has some clear areas of challenge, and perhaps at first glance he's having difficulty in all areas, as they're all below the national average. If we look more closely at his writing skills, however, we'll see that his spelling is only 3% below this average, and there are only 15 questions. Likewise, in grammar and punctuation, although there's a 12% negative comparison with national averages, this equates to just a single question. It is Ryan's comprehension of texts that he finds most challenging, in both narrative and non-narrative forms. This will probably serve to back up what the teacher already suspects or knows, and will of course impact on his performance in SPAG. We also know that if he can be supported in his reading before starting level 1 and 2 studies at Key Stage 4, he'll be able to access the curriculum in all subject areas far more successfully. Here we can see a Year 7 science report. She's performed at the upper end of the average level, and as such is in the 6th STAY9 for chemistry, physics, and working scientifically. In biology, she's done a little better, and is in the 7th STAY9. Overall, she's performing at a level expected for someone who could go on to achieve a grade 5 at GCSE science. On first glance, here's a student who's performing perfectly well, and someone with whom we might almost be tempted to just carry on as we are. Looking further, however, we can see that it's her application of knowledge and understanding that's an area that she finds more challenging than the others. Why might this be? How could it impact her as she gets older? If we can find out, we could perhaps support her in achieving even more highly. We'll come back to this point shortly. Another helpful aspect of the individual report is a section suggesting specific learning and teaching and learning objectives for students that teachers might use to support them. This can be incredibly empowering to both teacher and student in terms of personalized learning. We're able to accurately target areas of challenge in ways that we know are effective, rather than throwing the subject content out there and hoping some of it sticks. So in this child's case, core to her challenges are her ability to effectively extract information, so linked to her reading, and her confidence and ability in using specific vocabulary. But how would that help her? Well, I happen to know this girl as she's my daughter. On the face of it, here we have a student who's on track for a grade 5 at GCSE, someone who loves the investigative side of science and tries hard. But she's on the learning support register. And if a teacher saw that grade, they might be forgiven for thinking all is well. Here's a student who's well above what her statutory levels from primary would suggest. But I also know that although she's a fluent reader, she struggles to translate the information she takes in onto the written page, and that she needs more time in doing so. Her issues might partly stem from attachment disorder, which a class teacher might not be aware of, and certainly wouldn't be able to see, or be expected to diagnose through classwork. The root cause, of course, doesn't really matter. What does is that the progress test as a diagnostic tool points the teacher towards ways of supporting her that otherwise might have been overlooked. Without intervention, however, it might be that as she goes up through the year groups, she finds accessing the materials more and more difficult, and that grade 5 becomes a 3. How often has we come across a student who seems to be doing well in year 7, only to have seemingly lost all motivation by year 11? Social and extenuating circumstances aside, the progress tests allow us to diagnose potential barriers to learning, as well as directing us to ways to overcome them, providing time and frequent opportunities to practice, for instance, providing opportunities for joint writing. By putting this support in place now, not only could it consolidate the grade she's working towards, but it could support her in achieving even more highly in the future. Now more than ever, of course, giving parents the ability to effectively support their children is even more important. We've all seen those cries for help on Facebook or WhatsApp groups, the mum or dad stuck at home, trying to desperately comprehend something they last engaged with 30 years ago. I know, I'm one of them. The parent reports then can be a lifesaver, reinforcing the communication between home and school, as well as giving specific and developmental feedback. The report provides a scores analysis before moving on to score descriptors that include learning suggestions, easily implemented in a home learning environment by a parent or carer. This can provide personalized reassurance and guidance to parents and carers when supporting students at home. In this report, we can see the range of examples provided. This includes suggestions as to how to support academic work, ways to improve engagement with literacy, and also ways to help develop spelling skills. Even more powerfully, by using CAT4, our cognitive abilities test, as well as the PT series, which many of you will be, our combination reports make direct comparisons between attainment data as measured through that progress test and data measuring specific areas of cognitive strength and areas of challenge as measured through the CAT4. The word potential is sometimes a dangerous one. You can place a glass ceiling of sorts on a student's attainment, but by using both tests together in this way, we can begin to understand strengths and potential barriers to learning, leading young people to being challenged and supported appropriately in all areas. Now, I know that in schools you can be inundated with data. The issue is not necessarily one of accessing data, but what to actually do with it. And as I said at the start, young people are not numbers. If you think about these reports in the same way that you consider any form of communication, then you need to start with audience and purpose. Who's it for, and what do you need them to do with it? All too often we pass data on to someone or get it ourselves, and the initial thought is, oh, that looks interesting and useful. Then it's cleared off the desk at the end of the school year, having never been looked at again. So when we look at the reports, think about who each piece of information will be useful for, when and how they should get it, and what they need to do with it once they have it. What is the intended impact of sharing that report or that piece of data with that particular member of staff? Finally, I mentioned earlier about the potential impact of the global pandemic on students and teachers on test results. Clearly, no one knows for sure what the precise effect of being out of the classroom will be, nor being back in school in such unique circumstances, but we are committed to keeping you as informed as possible so that you can add some data to the armory of information you already have about your young people. This analysis will allow you to compare your own data to the post-lockdown national picture and should help inform you about trends in the impact seen across subjects and age groups. What we know so far is that for reading, the impact has been fairly minimal, but more so in maths and in science. Interestingly, what we're seeing at present also is that free school meal students are being affected less than those who don't receive free school meals. Next Thursday, the 4th of February, our head of data, Bernadetta Brzezinska, will be presenting a webinar providing an additional level of analysis for you based on the data from the tests taken specifically this autumn. This analysis will help you to contextualize your own post-lockdown pictures and understand whether your data mirrors the national picture or shows something different. So please do sign up via our website or the link here. I hope the information provided has served to give you some initial pointers as to how the key elements of the Progress Test series can help you at this time of transition back into school. Before we end, I'd like to point out that we have several resources to help you with your administration and analysis. We have a concise data guide to the PT series, which is an accessible one-page document, and the links to national curricula for all 3 categories. We also have a training hub with support videos, as well as all of our webinars over the coming weeks. If you've missed any webinars, you'll find recordings of them on our website. Finally, please do feel free to book a one-to-one data consultation with the Assessment Insights team or your education advisor. We're here to help you analyse and interpret your data to inform in-school actions. And all members of the team have spent many years working in schools across different sectors and age ranges. So I'll just look at some of the questions that have come in before I come to a close. Is the Progress Test Series a test of the curriculum? Well, while the Progress Test Series has been designed to sample and reflect the national curricula across the UK, it's not designed as a test of the curriculum as a whole. It's a summative assessment, so it reflects the curriculum and should be diagnostically used to assess whether there are gaps in knowledge that have been taught and where students have strengths that need to be challenged. We've got one here. How do I set up access arrangements for the tests? Well, they're not timed, so there's nothing you need to do in terms of applying additional time. You can simply allow students to progress through the assessment at their own pace. Those who require a reader can have one, but only for those assessments which don't assess reading. So it can be used for maths and science, but only for the spelling, punctuation and grammar section on the English test. I have a student who, due to dyslexia, probably won't be able to access the age-appropriate tests. Presumably, we can administer a more accessible test. Well, we'd still advise that the student should sit the age-appropriate level of the Progress Test Series if at all possible. So we'd recommend trying the right test level for the student's age first. By all means, meet any access arrangements as needed. So, for instance, using a coloured overlay, if that's helpful, providing a reader for those tests that he or she is allowed to do so. If a student really can't access the test, though, and you've got the professional expertise here to make that decision, then it might be that a lower test level would be appropriate. However, in that scenario, you do need to be aware that the standard age score would be affected. So you need to bear that in mind when interpreting the data. But please do get in touch with us for more guidance on this if you wish. Okay, so that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for any feedback that you've given. And thank you so much for all you continue to do in this incredibly difficult time. Any questions that haven't been answered, we'll be emailing those through to you. Just a quick recap. We've had a very quick look at not only what the Progress Test Series is and what it measures, but also the data and reports that you have access to with the Progress Test Series and how these can help you in this unusual year. Most importantly, I hope you leave this webinar in the knowledge that the information that these and other tests put at your fingertips can really make a difference to the learning experience of the young people that I know you care about so much. On behalf of GL, I'd like to wish you all the best and hope that this year gets a lot easier for you all. Thank you.